Four, three, two, one. Welcome to the Dangerzone. This episode is the second podcast in a series of conversations I'm having surrounding the injustice that two Marine Raiders and a Marine Raider medic are currently facing. If at any point you feel you are missing some context, go back and listen to episode 41, where I introduce and outline the current situation. If you feel as though you're having trouble understanding the dynamics at play in the way military handles court cases, go back and listen to part 1 of these conversations. In that episode, episode 42, I talk with Fred Galvin, who is able to provide some insight regarding the complexity and severity of this situation. He has first-hand experience as Marine Corps officer fighting for injustice for himself and his men who were wrongfully accused back in 2007. Today I'm talking with the wife of one of the accused Marine Raiders in the current case pending court-martial, or as you know it, trial. Her name is Destiny Draher, and she is the wife of Danny Draher. She is also a mother, prior service member, and a Gold Star spouse. We discuss her personal experiences and gain some perspective on how this current case has been handled so far. Please provide your support by listening to her story, visiting uap.org, reconsniperfoundation.org, and reconfoundation.org, and asking how you can support these warriors and their families. Also consider writing letters to your representatives in the U.S. Congress and Senate. Make sure not to mention if you're associated with a branch of service. If you're a prior service member and you put that you were in the Navy, Marine Corps, Army, etc., the congressional offices will just direct those letters to the services, and they won't be processed by the representatives themselves. You can also attend your representatives' town halls and ask them if they are familiar with the case and if they are willing to get involved and join the Justice for Warriors Caucus. For those of you that don't know, the Justice for Warriors Caucus is a nonpartisan congressional caucus to support imprisoned combat warriors who fought for our freedom and have been unfairly treated by the military justice system. So now, here's episode 43. Hello, Destiny. Welcome to the Dangerzone.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you so much for being willing to join me on the podcast so we can share the information about this incident and this case and this injustice that's currently happening.
Well, thank you for actually giving me the opportunity to speak and say my side of the story.
For sure. Speaking of your side of the story, let's go ahead and dive into it, and let's hear from your perspective from when the incident happened, and kind of chronologically, can you kind of tell us what happened from your end and just your experience through hearing about what happened and sort of starting from the beginning?
Yes, sure. So we need to go back to 2018 going into 2019. So this would be New Year's Eve. I get a call from my husband, and he is telling me, hey, him and a few friends are going to be going out to go grab some food and just have a little celebration. And I'm like, okay. So then I think it's the day so it's January 1st, 2019, and I get a phone call from him. And he somewhat explains to me a situation that happened pretty much after midnight. And at that time, I didn't think it was much of a big deal. So we get off the phone, and I get a call from him a few hours later, and he tells me that I might not hear from him and that he might not be calling me from his personal phone. So I was like, all right, mind you, I just know very generalized things of what occurred. So then I pretty much get a phone call, and he's pretty much in a different country. So 3 days after that, I start seeing articles being circulated about the situation, and listening
How
to
did they
my husband.
initially tell the story?
So the articles had a really false narrative to it. The articles were stating that the contractor Rodriguez had gotten curb stomped. He got jumped. The altercation started at the gym. The altercation started at like a shooting competition, and that was about it. They were just really outrageous stories with no facts, and they were all anonymous, of course.
Wow.
So then at that time, I'm thinking, okay, you put this article out, and there's people that's reading it, but never once did you ever think about maybe the family of the deceased that was reading it and how they're feeling about the situation, and just the fact that it wasn't the truth. Um, so I start seeing these articles, and maybe 3 days later, I'm starting to get phone calls to my personal phone, and they're from friends that are in our community, and they are stating that they're hearing from people within leadership inside of a bar talking about what Danny did, and I guess he was stating, "Did you hear what he did?" Kind of like the whole rumor mill starting, and this is kind of upsetting because people listen to this crap, and that's somebody who's pretty much a senior enlisted individual, so he's already starting to taint certain things. So that's when I started getting upset, and I hear from Danny. I'm kind of relaying him all this information that I'm hearing about the article, and then another article comes out, and 4 days later, the contractor he dies, and I think a day or so after that, Danny gets transferred to Camp Arifjan, and eventually he comes home a few weeks after that.
Wow. So here this incident occurred, and there's a false narrative put out. There's lies put out in
Mhm.
the public space right away. The family of the deceased is being told a false narrative right off the bat. Um,
Mhm.
and so, like, what happened following that? Like, what what happened with Danny um, and you? Like, what happened? How did it play out after the initial incident reporting and you know, the contractor passing away?
So at this time, since I'm not hearing much from Danny, and I'm not really hearing a status of where he's at, pretty much at this point expecting a phone call from the command, just as common courtesy and respect for my family and the two other families that are involved. So I don't get a phone call, and from the point of the incident to present day, I still haven't heard anything from the command. And so he ends up coming home, and pretty much at the point that he comes home and lands in the U.S., the command has already preemptively found him guilty before ever hearing any of the facts, and that pretty much sets the tone for the past like 13 months. So a few months after this, and he's home. I want to say it's about May June timeframe. Danny ends up getting his pay taken away, his SDA pay. He gets his security clearance revoked. His promotion is put on hold. He's alienated. He's humiliated. They put him in the gym for, I guess, to show up for duty and work there. The other individuals are barrack managers, or they're sitting in a clinic absolutely doing nothing.
So you're telling me there was no presumption of innocence at all?
Not at all.
And punishment was dealt out before, like, it sounds like there was even an investigation completed on this deal. What didn't, if I remember correctly, didn't Danny had already contacted the command and told them what happened, like soon after the incident?
So yes. So right after the incident, the next day after the altercation, Danny let his command know, hey, this is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no he was trying to hide it or anything.
Yeah.
Everybody knew.
So the command had the true story, yet there was this false story that was put out in the public, a lie, and the command grabbed onto that instead, and then had this knee-jerk reaction and punished him. Already punished these men, these Marine Raiders, and that demonstrates no presumption of innocence when you're already dealing out punishment before there's even been, you're proven at fault. And for those of you that don't understand maybe how the military works, getting your security clearance pulled, his promotion being held up, having pay taken away when you have family that you're providing for, all that stuff is pretty severe punishment. And to go on beyond that, to like be sort of the humiliation campaign you're talking about, where they're talking behind his back around the command, spreading rumors and false stories around, that's just insult to injury, and creating sort of that, when how is there supposed to be a fair investigation, a fair trial or anything in this when the potential juror pool is already tainted, it's just, it's wild to see how hard these knee-jerk reactions are, and they're still looking to continue with this trial and this punishment. Can you tell me a little bit about NCIS investigating this, like at Iraq, and then how they handled it here back in the U.S.?
Yeah, so there was like a lead investigator out there that pretty much investigated everything, and we'll discuss this in a few. He ends up showing up to the Article 32 hearing. If people don't know, an Article 32 hearing, it's like a grand jury on the civilian side, and there's a lot of people out there that don't really understand the military justice system. They don't understand the command is supposed to be fair and partial, and the command's always supposed to stay neutral. So I should be able to have the ability to trust the legal process, but I don't, because how do I trust the legal process? How does Danny trust the legal process after all these things are happening, and then the convening authority is General Yu, who is the MARSOC commander, and people within the leadership are making comments. For example, somebody made the comment, oh, those guys are murderers and they should burn for what they did. And he said that in front of a whole bunch of subordinates. And then you have people fearing doing the right thing. So then you're starting to hear things like, you can't write them a character recommendation. And this is all before the facts are even out. Nobody knows anything at this point, besides very, very basic things. And they are just assuming and making assumptions, probably from the first few stories that came out.
Mm-hmm.
And people keep telling us to let the legal process work itself out. But how do you do that when things are stacked up against you?
Yeah.
And
So
so oh sorry,
did
prior to the Article 32 hearing, NCIS did show up to
mm-hmm.
my house in an L-shaped formation. So one person was right at the door, and the other person was way off at the corner, like I was going to do something when I opened up the door, and they just so happened to come right after I gave birth to my son. So to me, it was almost like a scare tactic. NCIS or the government's probably thinking, oh, they're probably going through like a lot of stress. She just had a baby, so she's probably vulnerable. So let's go to her house at this point in time.
Yeah, interesting. And so what happened when they showed up at your house and they're sort of trying to corner you during this vulnerable time and put this pressure on you?
They wanted to ask questions about the situation and about Danny, but I told them that they could go ahead and speak to my lawyer about that, and then I closed the door.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, NCIS does not have the cleanest history, especially of late and just in the past. Their pressure tactics, what they've done to families during investigations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there seems to be no restraint on their end. There's no accountability. I mean, you look at the recent Gallagher case, and this isn't comparing these two cases because they're very different. It's just making a statement of the sort of character of NCIS. Was using spyware on the defense's computers to
Mm-hmm.
gain information to help them in the case, and the people involved were only removed from the case, and then they were about to be receiving medals until President Trump stood in and said, "No, you're not getting awarded for doing the wrong thing." And I think that's what's been happening for years in this
Mm-hmm.
corrupt system. It's all connected from the military justice system to the investigators doing it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's jacked up. So while you're under all this pressure, you have NCIS showing up at your door unannounced. They didn't feel the need to, hey, call you and say, hey, can you come in and talk to us or anything like that. Did you at least have some support from the command, like the family support structure that's supposed to be there?
No, there's absolutely no support from the command, since the command feels or assumes that Danny is guilty. My family has suffered for that too. So it's like I mentioned, not even a courtesy phone call from the beginning at all.
So even when the incident happened, they didn't keep you updated on
No,
Danny's return to the U.S. or anything like that.
not at all. Not a fro, not a family readiness officer. For those who don't know, nobody. Not even like a little lieutenant or maybe a gunny giving me a phone call, and it's been like that. Like I said, from the beginning. It's a bit upsetting, but from my standpoint, it's pretty much expected from them. I don't have any faith in the command or any of their family services or their programs, because to me they're really not that effective. So,
Well,
and they proved my point.
yeah, I would say so. I would say, SOCOM, Special Operations Command, and Marine Special Operations Command talk a lot of, you know, talk a big game about supporting families, and yet where's the proof of that? Where's your action? You know, actions speak louder than words. What are you doing for the families during tough times? And it sounds like they were just completely absent with this. And
There. Mhm.
and for people that don't understand, there's people designated at the command, like the we call it FRO for short. It's Family Readiness Officer. They're supposed to be there to be a link between the command and the family members, because doing this job, when you have a spouse and children and all this, in order to do your job, you need to make sure you need to know that your family's taken care of, that they're not being stressed out by being kept out of the loop and not knowing what's going on, you know?
Very much
Um,
so.
and it seems like they're totally disregarding that, which it's it's very short-sighted on their part, and can play into a readiness issue where when 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 people don't feel like their families are taken care of, how are they supposed to focus on the mission when they're worried about what's going on at home? And so, again, I think it is very short-sighted, because if they did genuinely care about the families and followed through with action on what they say they're supposed to
Mhm.
be doing, then you would see, you know, mission success. You would have a better command environment. You would have a better fighting force. Um, so let's hear about the Article 32 hearing, which, for those of you that don't know, is um, it's like a grand jury, right?
Mhm.
Um, so like kind of a hearing before a trial to see if it's like worthy of going to trial, as I understand it.
Yes. Yes. So the Article 32 hearing was a 2-day process. There was a hearing officer there, prosecution, and all three of our lawyers. So day one, I walk in, and pretty much Rodriguez's family is there, and rightfully so. Um, the tone of the court was really different. You could tell that they were upset, they were angry, they were sad, they were crying, they were making comments underneath their breath throughout the whole proceeding, and which is all expected. Like I completely understand, because I've been there, and I've had to grieve over a loved person. So and like I said, rightfully so. But unfortunately, they are under the impression the whole time that their loved one was murdered.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting there and I'm listening, and they bring up the lead NCIS investigator, and so he was there. He saw all the videotapes, because there are videotapes of the situation that happened, and he's sitting there stating the entire time Rodriguez is the aggressor. So
Very
rewind,
important
Dan,
statement, and
very, very, very important fact. So
this is
rewind,
from the
Danny and
investigator in Iraq.
yes,
Okay.
yes. So he was actually on the witness stand.
Yeah.
So Danny, Eric, and Josh, they ended up going out. They're going out. They wanted to celebrate because Danny found out, he's on the mass sergeant list. Eric was on his promotion list. There's a baby on the way. So they go out, and they go to one establishment, and then they go to the next establishment where Rodriguez was at. And in the video, it shows Rodriguez talking to Eric. And at first it seems okay, and then there's more footage where it starts getting aggressive and aggressive. Before Eric was there, Rodriguez was already giving other people a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
So So one of the security guards sees Rodriguez kind of starting to get angry and aggressive, so he ends up kicking Rodriguez out of the establishment. Danny at this time doesn't know anything that's going on. So when Rodriguez is getting kicked out of the establishment, the security guard heard him say, "I'm going to kick his," referring to Eric.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to kick his, the word. And then he stood out there and waited. So then the establishment
So
closes.
he's outside waiting to,
Yeah.
ambush these guys.
Yes. So he's out there. As we were saying earlier, there was a lot of false narratives. So everybody thinks there was 3 Marines that jumped a contractor in a dark alley. That's not what happened. Rodriguez was out there with 5 to 7 other service members and contractors, and they were by a vehicle of some sort. So Eric is telling Danny as they're walking to their vehicle, "Hey, this is what happened. For some reason, he was being aggressive towards me. I don't even understand what he was talking about or what he was saying. He was trying to compare our jobs, whatever it might be." So Danny's like, "Okay." He's like, "I'll just go confront him. It doesn't have to be like that. Let me go try to de-escalate because I don't want this crap going back on post." So Danny proceeds to go up to Rodriguez because Rodriguez is in the same pathway where their vehicle is. So Danny goes up to him and he's like, "Hey, why does it have to be like that?" Like I said, he's trying to de-escalate because he has every right to, because Danny at that time was one of the senior enlisted guys over there. And he has every right to make an on-the-spot correction. Like anybody in the military, you can do that. So he goes up and talks to him, and Rodriguez is already starting to get aggressive, and he's poking at Danny on the chest and pretending to headbutt him. So Danny just pushes him, and just to give space, "Hey, I don't want I don't want to start anything." And that's when Rodriguez proceeds to punch Danny. And then as Rodriguez is winding up for the second punch, Josh comes and punches Rodriguez. Rodriguez falls to the ground, and Danny at this time, his back is turned, and he's just hearing things, and he turns around. There's a little scuffle, and mind you, this is all on video, and they all everybody at that point kind of gathers around Rodriguez. Eric is rendering aid to him, and then at that point, everybody disperses. One person goes, grabs the keys out of Rodriguez's pocket, and they all leave. Every single one of his friends, quote unquote friends, left. So Danny, Josh, and Eric, they were thinking to themselves, "You can't leave him out here, so let's put him in the vehicle and let's drive him back."
Mm-hmm.
So they ended up they drove him back. They put him in his room. Eric and another individual sat there and pretty much watched him overnight. So, but during the Article 32 hearing, one of the witnesses stated Danny was on top of him and punching him and this and that. That never happened. And the video shows that. And these were Rodriguez's friends.
Yeah.
These people that were on this stand. So if
not much
that
credibility when you leave your friend in the street.
Exactly. So for me, watching this and listening to all this, I'm thinking in my mind, well, why aren't they held accountable? They just pretty much deserted their friend. So after everything, Danny goes and tells the command, "Hey, this is what happens, this and that." I guess throughout the night, Rodriguez takes a turn and he starts choking, and then that's when I think somebody else was watching him, goes and tells Eric. Eric comes, and then they take him to the medical facility, and he's eventually flown out to the launch stool, and he passes away 4 days later.
Wow. So that's interesting that his friends, quote unquote friends, left him there. And this is all on video. And you have the NCIS
Mhm.
investigator that was there in Iraq, who's the one, the one collecting this information, stating that Rodriguez was the aggressor the whole time.
Yes.
So, um, what what did the friends, quote unquote friends, have to say for themselves, or what were they saying about the incident?
I don't think during the hearing, they didn't really say anything. So this is day two when the video is actually shown.
Mm-hmm.
And Danny's lawyer ends up slowing down the video so you could see it frame by frame, second by second. And you see Danny nowhere near on top of Rodriguez. You don't see any of the stories that were being told. And you could tell that the tone of the family had changed because
Mm.
at this time it's been months. They want answers. They want somebody to pay for things, but they're being told by the command, NCIS, government, convening authority, whoever it is, somebody murdered their loved one. So now that they see the video, their grieving process has now changed because when they walked out at the end of the day, it was really, really quiet because they kind of see the truth and they kind of see the facts right there.
Yeah.
That was probably a really hard pill for them to swallow,
Mm-hmm.
but shame on the government for allowing the family to think that their loved one was murdered. Shame on General Yu for never speaking to the guys and asking them their side of the story while he is at the deceased's funeral.
Wow.
But
And
yet, you don't talk to your own guys. You don't get the truth. You don't get the facts. Or you don't wait until the legal process is actually processed.
yeah, this baffles me that General Yu is pushing this forward to court martial.
Yes, he
He's
is.
the convening authority. He's the one that decides how this plays out, and uh, it sounds like in this Article 32 hearing there should have been a consensus of this was self defense. Um, the quote unquote friends left their friend in the street after this, after he was the aggressor the whole time and got,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how else to put in his place, but um, unfortunately, there was complications later on, but it seems like,
Right.
not. It sounds like it was brought on by his own decisions to me,
Yes.
and this is a case of self defense, and why it's going to court martial, baffles me. After I did a podcast with Fred Galvin, and that'll be before this one. If you haven't heard that, you should go listen to it. And you start to get a clearer picture of how different the military justice system is to the civilian side, and how there
Mm-hmm.
is just prevalent injustice throughout all of it. And a big part of that conversation revolves around General Yu and the fact that he's pushing this forward, even though there's clear video evidence that it was self-defense. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if I remember correctly, the prosecution said in the Article 32 hearing that it would be hard to be a tough case to win, because of the
But
self-defense.
the hearing off.
Oh,
So the hearing officer said that it's gonna be a tough case.
okay. The hearing
Um,
officer.
and he's the one who pretty much puts all the facts together, and then from there he gives it to General Yu, and then General Yu can make decision.
And he's deciding to go forward with this, and so big
Right.
question in my head was why. Um, and I mean, I guess I would have to say he's like trying to save face. He's trying to get promoted to, he's trying to get another star. It was very enlightening talking to Fred Galvin about all this, and so if
Mhm.
um, I have a much better understanding. I think a lot of people maybe think, oh, it's the military; they just kind of handle their own stuff. But there's a lot of people talk about draining the swamp in D.C. and how corrupt politicians are and stuff, and that
Right.
really does bleed over into our military. Um, you have this commander who, you know, did he tell the family who told the family the wrong story? Who he he perpetuated a false story, a lie, and now is pushing a self-defense case into a court martial with huge charges, stacked charges
Yes. Mhm.
of manslaughter and all these things that carry heavy, 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 heavy discipline, or uh, punishment. And he's also got a history of abuse. I mean, I heard from Fred about this guy. He's he's got a history of character assassination because he was connected with the Marsoc 7 case. It was a case several years ago. If you want to hear about it, go listen to the last podcast. Um, he got his DUI when he was a captain, and he got off from it, no problem, no punishment whatsoever, and he's had a uh, inspector general command climate investigation done on him, which he just got put at a different command. And
Mhm.
what you see is in the military system, it's different spanks for different ranks, as Fred puts it.
Pretty much.
And so he's pushing this forward. Um, and this is why we need people to act and get involved in this case so it gets disposed before it even goes to court martial. Um, do you did you have anything to add about General Yu and sort of your experience with him? I just here, you know what? Can you react to this quote that he made recently? He says, "This is in a speech he gave at a an event recently." He says, "I'm thankful for all that you do day in and day out to support our warfighters, uphold our Marine Raider legacy, and forge our path of providing the nation and geographic combat commanders a Marine Special Operations Force capable of dynamically adjusting to meet the complex demands of the future operating environment." Blah, 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 blah. Buzzword, 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 you know, trying to sound smart. Said you. "I am incredibly proud of your accomplishments. At times, the ultimate sacrifice was made, and we will continue to honor and remember those that have given their lives in support of this great nation. They and their loved ones will forever be a part of our Marine Raider family."
Mm. Well, that's very interesting. Because my brother-in-law had met with him right last year after the 4-year anniversary of the Raider 7 passing. So my brother-in-law did a memorial march, and he ended up going over there to Stone Bay, and General Yu came out, and my brother-in-law was wearing flip-flops, and General Yu just had, a narky comment to my brother-in-law, who was also standing there with my daughter, who's a Gold Star child. And so my brother-in-law, being as witty as he is, made the statement, "Well, I didn't know my brother was a civilian. So I was married to a staff sergeant, Flynn, and there's a wall out there of all of the fallen, and the command decided to make a mistake and not put his rank on there, and also spelled somebody else's name wrong. So no, I don't trust a command that can't even do a simple duty of double checking on things before somebody etches in some marble. And there has also been other situations at a social event that General Yu was at, where he confronts another raider and asks him a question. And I guess General Yu didn't like his response, so he proceeded to go ask the wife the same question, and she agreed with she agreed with her husband. I'm sorry, and he told the wife she didn't know what the heck she was talking about while his hand was in her face, and that is
Wow.
another raider wife.
So
So for him to make a statement like that, but then his actions are completely different, or his actions have been, in my opinion, a bit self-serving.
yeah, I don't think there's any other way to really see it. I mean, the he says these words. He's talking about all these buzzwords about, oh, integrating this and that, blah 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 blah, which really doesn't mean shit. Um, and then he says this stuff about honoring the fallen, honoring the families. We're all one big Marine Raider family, and it's hollow words. He's spewing bullshit, bullshit, and it's all self-serving. It's supposed to make him look good. It's supposed to make him. He thinks he's intelligent. He thinks he's, you know, with this case, he thinks he's, you know, looking good in front of the SOCOM commanders. The Special Operations Command is over Marine Special Operations Command. He thinks he's going to get his next promotion by taking this case that shouldn't go to court martial. He's going to take it to court martial anyways. He's going to try and get what he wants, and he's going to try and get promoted over it. Never mind how many people's lives are destroyed in the process. Never mind the fact that he's just spewing bullshit all the time, when in reality, the true General Yu is the type of guy to get in one of his Marine Raiders' spouse's face and,
Mm-hmm.
tell them off. What this is who we choose to be the commander of Marine Special Operations Command. He sounds like a little brat. A little he's he's completely self-serving. He hasn't been put in check in his own career. He gets a DUI on base, and he's putting Marines' lives at risk driving around drunk, and yet he doesn't get punished for it. He just gets to do whatever he wants. So
Or,
go ahead.
I mean, so he doesn't even take the time to speak to three individuals that have sacrificed over 18 years of service. All three individuals. You those three individuals, to include Danny, my husband, they have sacrificed their time. They have sacrificed families. Just because they believe in MARSOC, and they believe in this brotherhood, and they believe in the mission. And I just don't understand how it's so easy for somebody to go to sleep at night burning three guys that have a family, and would probably give up their lives for that place. And those are the true silent warriors. But at the same time, they are disposable heroes to General Yu. And look, these are my opinions, but I'm going off of what I've experienced and what I've seen. Um, and it's just really unfortunate. I don't really know how I feel about this whole situation. There's a lot of anger because I've already sacrificed one husband for an organization, and now this is happening to me, and I'm just not going to sit here and allow that to happen. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this is the legal process and this is how it works, because if it does, it needs to change. So when people on the outside are wondering, well, why is she doing this and why is she doing that? There's a legal process. Well, if you don't know how it is and you're not in my situation, then you might want to kind of be quiet. And on
Mm-hmm.
top of that, any spouse could have been in this situation. And if you don't really know your rights, or you're not smart enough to go educate yourself about it, then yeah, you're probably going to allow your husband to be in a certain place. But for me, I'm just not going to sit here on my couch when I've experienced the command with two different people, two very different situations.
I gotta say, it's very admirable the way you're fighting for your husband right now, and for the men in this case. And they are the real war fighters. They're the ones, when our nation decides to go to war, they're the ones volunteering to be put into a spot where they're in the most dangerous positions. And yet, even in this case, um, to put some of this in perspective, the the military justice system was kind of put in place as like a wartime court, right? The ability to conduct trials like while you're at war, and it's to quote unquote instill good order and discipline.
Mhm.
And basically, the court can do whatever they want, and the as long as it falls back to that premise. But here you have three actual warfighters, the ones who are on the ground actually completing the missions given to them, right? And
Mhm.
they're the ones that have good order and discipline. They're the ones that didn't leave the this former special forces Green Beret, this contractor out in the middle of the street. That was the friends. They're the ones that didn't have good order and discipline. They're the ones that left him, right? And
Right.
they tried de-escalating the situation. It's they did the right thing. And not only that, they're each one of these these men, Josh, Eric, and your husband Danny, all have the career that backs it up. That they are stand-up men and good at their jobs. And yet, look at the history of General Yu, the one that is trying to punish them. DUIs,
Mhm.
getting in families' faces. He's just a complete jackass. And he's the one that gets to decide whether this goes to court martial. There's something seriously wrong. You can't call this a justice system. It's an injustice system, and it needs to be changed. Here's and this is why people need to get involved, and it's not just about the it's not just a military thing. It's not just this out of sight, out of mind. Hey, we'll let the military handle that. It doesn't affect me and my family. The Department of Defense is the largest employer in the United States. And so it does. It has second and third order effects when you have this injustice system, this corrupt
Mhm.
political system. Aside from it's connected. It's connected to Congress. It's connected to um, these powerful companies within the defense industry, and it's all self-serving. And so these these officers can move up, get promoted, and then get these nice cushy jobs at a defense
Mhm.
contractor company. And if so, there's second and third order effects to this. There's families
Mhm.
that are trampled in the process, and it takes, you know, I would say your feeling of anger is very justified. But there's a huge emotional toll on the families. There's financial toll. I mean, before even being proven guilty, you all have had pay stripped away from you, and a promotion where he'd be getting paid more has been put on hold, all before a trial. And it's
Mhm.
it's a crazy system that needs to be changed. And this is why people need to get involved and try and get this case out in the public so we can get it disposed before it goes. And here's a couple more reasons why it doesn't need to go to court martial. And that's because they're facing a high conviction rate. The only one that is the only country we the military justice system has the highest conviction rate in the world, um, even more than communist China, and the the jurors report to the convening authority. The jurors come from Marine Special Operations Command, um, and so they're not just like random, impartial people that are deciding the fate of your case.
Mhm.
Um, there hasn't been a presumption of innocence from the beginning, so why would you want to go to trial if you haven't been presumed innocent? And they're overcharging them when it's clearly self-defense. Why would you want to go to trial for charges that are way overcharged? And then there's the going through this process, the destruction to your family's health and finances. So how can you explain to us sort of like the second and third order effects of this?
Okay, so what I find interesting is right after the Article 32 hearing, mind you, before that, none of the names were released. After the Article 32 hearing, the names were released and the charge sheets were released. And I guess nobody at MARSOC maybe thought about the second and third order of effects. So we have children and we have kids, and our kids go to school. We live in neighborhoods, and people hear these things, and some people will just listen to all the bad stuff. Oh my gosh, her dad is a murderer. My daughter plays on a soccer league in the community, and you didn't once ever think about how that affects us and the stress. And then you didn't even think about if you're gonna try my husband and you're gonna assume he's guilty. What about after he gets out and how that affects him? So here we have a guy that has 18 years of good service, nothing bad on his record, but now his picture is floating on the internet. So how is he supposed to get a job? As General Yu just gets to retire and enjoys the rest of his life. I just don't know how that man goes to sleep at night. I don't know how he looks at himself in the mirror with the confidence that he's doing something right. And I don't understand why there's certain individuals at the command that don't speak up.
Yeah,
Because
it's
I was under the impression that this was a brotherhood. I was under the impression that this was a culture that stands next to, you know, the man beside them that he's gone off to war with. But there's so many people over there that are just looking out for themselves, and they're not putting themselves in our position.
yeah, and unfortunately, from what I've learned, getting involved and finding out more about how this system works. And I was in the military. I was in MARSOC. I was,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's I've seen parts of the military justice system, but I had no idea how big this thing goes and how it really is a it's a command climate. This culture within the Department of Defense that is corrupt. It is absolutely
Mm-hmm.
corrupt and it is disgusting. And so okay, let's say even though Department of Defense is the biggest employer, right? So you may have a relative or somebody. This is how it affects the everyday person. you probably know somebody that works for the Department of Defense, and they're working for a corrupt system. So, and we're not talking about like the war fighters, right? The people who are doing, executing the mission and actually doing good
Mhm.
things around the world. We're talking about the higher level part of the Department of Defense. And you, let's say you don't even have somebody, a family member or anything. If you're a United States citizen, you're paying taxes. You're paying into this corrupt system. You're paying
Mhm.
Daniel Yu's fucking paycheck as a 2-star general. You know, um, so you you're in this whether you want to be or not. It's affecting everybody, and it's it's sad to hear that, and that it seems just common for Daniel Yu and the other officers in the command. There's just a culture of, we'll just trample over everybody as long as I get ahead in my career. It doesn't matter about our mission, which is to be like the best fighting force for America. None of that stuff matters. The only thing that matters is my next little position in this scheme, and and they'll just lie, cheat, do whatever they have to do to get there.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter how many families they destroy. Doesn't matter how many innocent people they put behind bars, put in prison. It doesn't matter, and that's why. I mean, it's really sad to see something like this play out. Um,
Mhm.
it makes me angry as an American citizen. It angers me that this type of treatment is happening to our best warfighters, the ones that are who are actually doing the job. Um, there's it's it's these commands that aren't commanders, who aren't even upholding their missions, their ideals, the supposed ideology behind these warrior ethoses and these ideas, these principles that we're fighting for. Like the Special Operations Command, on their own website, they have a soft truth. The number one soft truth is humans are more important than hardware.
Mhm.
And yet they're trampling over the human aspect. They're not seeing the human aspect. Yeah, how can Daniel Yu sleep at night when he they've lost any sense of empathy or feeling of understanding that the people doing the job for them, making them look good, are humans. They're humans. They're not
Yeah.
robots. And they don't deserve to be just discarded when, when something happens and you tell a lie, you put a false story out there, and then to back it up or do whatever just to get your next promotion, you're just going to bring this to court martial. Um
Well,
I don't know if you can hear, but it gets me riled up, and
yeah.
I just I want to hear about like your thoughts on sort of what we've talked about a lot. We've covered a lot
Well,
of
it's
material.
it, it's ironic you talk about human aspects
Yeah.
when you've pretty much alienated three guys and you've humiliated them. What makes you think? Not that this has ever came up, but it has within special operations. You belittled them, and what's to say one of these guys don't commit suicide, or something happens to their families and their families fall apart, and you know you just don't. I don't understand. People don't think about it in that sense. these guys would give up their life, and you won't even check up on them. Or I don't know. It's frustrating for me to sit there and look at my husband who believes in this organization, and I'm pretty sure he still believes in this organization still, like deep down inside, because this is all he has done for his whole entire career, from recon into MARSOC. So it's frustrating to see pretty much that's all he knows. Like, that's his culture, and those are his brothers, and you want him to trust and be loyal to the command, but it's not reciprocated back.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem, and just the whole empathy. I mean, I don't even know if that exists over there anymore, because as I mentioned to you, everything's a check in the block, and I've been on both sides. I've been a Gold Star wife within MARSOC, and everything has orders. So for me, going through one situation and now going through this, it's like, okay, with my first situation and losing my husband, it's like, okay, she has a casualty officer, check. We did the celebration of life, check. We did this, check. This, and this. It's just all checking the boxes. Oh, okay, well, make sure she knows about these programs and this and that. And then it's like, okay, be on your way. Everything's a facade to me. The whole honoring the fallen. I mean, I know it means a lot to some people. I do. So I'm not faulting everybody in the command, and I'm not saying that I need certain kind of treatment because I don't, because I've been able to do it on my own, and for me it's up to me to honor the person that I lost. But even in this current situation that I'm in, it's like everything's a check in the block. Okay, yeah, we did this, we did that. But then you like miss out on all the critical stuff, like the stuff the crap that you preach about the families, about communication, about trust, about transparency. None of that exists over there. Or that you actually even care. I just don't understand how you funnel so much money into one operator and you dispose of them so quickly. And who even knows the retention rate right now over there at MARSOC? But I know we have personal friends that have gotten out to go be pilots with the National Guard, or to go on the active duty side, or to become a SF Green Beret versus stay over there at MARSOC. So I just don't understand the organization, and I just don't understand why there is no communication, why my family's treated this way, but you expect me to just play nice. And I'm not saying anything out of bad intentions. I'm saying things on how I'm experiencing it.
Yeah,
and,
you're
and
just
what
sharing
I'm
your
seeing.
experience.
And everybody knows, like, every general wants to put their stamp on something. And General Yu wants to put his stamp on MARSOC for whatever reasons. He did the integration first, going to second and third, and he probably thinks in his mind he's going to go down in history books, and officers are going to write about him. But nobody cares, and people are going to forget you, because the foundation of that place is built off the backs of people like Danny, like Eric, like Josh, and other silent warriors over there. And guys that gave their life to that place. That is what that foundation is built on. Not some general who's only there for 3 to 4 years, who has the ability to ruin lives and walk away and move forward in his life, and then the next person comes in place. Because those operators will still be there, and they will work silently, and you can work the dog crap out of them, and they'll do it with pride and integrity, because that's all they know. And that's what's really unfortunate. And that's what I see from the outside looking in.
Yeah. It's so unfortunate that General Yu is missing the mark, and so many other, corrupt officers like him. And what's going to be left when they're sitting on their deathbed and they're like, "Oh man, I made a bunch of money." What does that mean? What
Nothing.
what kind of legacy are you leaving? Like you said, you're they're so forgettable, but yet the ripples they're creating in this universe that go out and have those second and third order effects on destroying families, destroying good men's lives. Like that's the energy you want to put out into this world, and it just it's it's disgusting, and um, we need to do something about it.
Mhm. And I just hope this going on in the situation that Danny, Josh, and Eric are in, people are really quick to just compare it to other situations that happened early on, years previous, and it's not the same thing.
No.
And nobody takes the time to maybe look at everything that they have done and the type of men that they are and the situation that occurred. They still took care of somebody that probably didn't really like them. Um, and they didn't leave him behind. They took him back, and it's like it's frustrating because that moment that occurred, which is very tragic, it the blame shouldn't be put on them because they did do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand why the command doesn't see it that way because I've sat through the Article 32. I've sat through, the past arraignments, and I'll sit through every one of the trials. So I don't
Well,
know. I just at this point, I just want it to be over, and I'm wishing the best. But I'll tell you this: I won't put my trust in the command, just because of everything that I mentioned, from the crap talking to other officers stating things in front of subordinates, to making these guys feel that they are guilty the whole time, or portraying that or putting that out there um, before hearing facts. I just don't know. Um, and people can probably sit there and say, "Oh man, she's just, you know, she's trying to put down the command and everything and all these things because she feels a certain way." But anybody that personally knows that I can handle a lot of stuff, and I understand that life is very unfair, but it's unfair to every single person in this world. But when something is unjust, that is a whole different thing. And maybe people don't understand that unfair and unjust are two different things, but it's unbearable for my family right now. But I'm not going to let this whole situation destroy my family. That's for sure. I'm going to stand by the person because I believe in him and I've heard the facts and I know the type of person that he is. And I know he's somebody that would give you his freaking shirt off of his back or give you the last of his money. Or if you call our house at 2 o'clock in the morning, he will go pick you up, or he'll hear you, or he'll listen to you, or he'll have his friends come over that are struggling, and he'll sit there and listen to be the soundboard to them. And I just wish that there were more people that were doing that for him and our family, because there really isn't that many, and that's okay. Because any
it's
support is
unfortunate though.
better than no support. It is. So I mean, I don't. I we will see in the next few months like what happens, and I do hope maybe the military justice system will work in our favor. You know, because at this point, that's all that I have. Because I'm as I said, I'm not going to put my trust in the commands, and because to me, in my life, they don't really exist except for those few people that really care about me and my family and Danny. But those relationships were already established way before this, and those people are the ones that know Danny and truly know the type of person that he is, and then the type of family that we are.
Wow. Um, well, I don't see it as you just talking bad about the command. I see you as a very strong woman who's already lost one Marine Raider husband, and you're fighting for your current husband, Danny, who's an honorable man, and um, I think it's very admirable of you, and you're being a good example of what supporting your loved ones and your friends is supposed to look like. And
Mm-hmm.
you'll do whatever it takes to help, you know, support that person, even though they're facing immense pressure. I mean, you all have been under this weight for over a year now, and
Yep.
um, you know, the command's the one that released their names and put
Mhm.
this out in the public view. Why shouldn't? And they've been parroting a lie and a false story out in the public and behind closed doors within the command, tainting, you know, potential juror pools and all this. So what? I don't think anybody should, you know, nobody can rightfully hold you hold anything against you for you sharing your story, your experience going through this hell. And
Mhm.
um and I really appreciate you being willing to share your story.
Thank you, because it's not easy for somebody like me to discuss things in my life or to be vulnerable. But obviously, when the stakes are high and it's my husband's career and it's our livelihood, I'm gonna make myself look very transparent and vulnerable to the public because they need to know, because it's not a clear cut and dry situation.
Mhm.
Um, and to be honest, I mean, serving like 13 years in the military and being a military brat, and my dad being in law, it's within the military, it's just really, it's something that I think I've learned more in 14 months than I've had in my whole military career. And talking to my dad about it, I've just learned way too much, and I never knew all these things, being in the military about UCMJ. Of course, there's certain things that I could probably, quote out of it, but nothing that relates to this. And now that I read about things, and I double check and I go look, there is no black and white area, and it doesn't play in the favor of the defendant. It Because they'll just keep stacking charges, and something has to stick. And that's when you're talking about the conviction rate. People are thinking, oh my gosh, the conviction rate, oh, it's gonna be, you know, murder and this and that. And it's like, no, 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 no. They'll take like the littlest thing, like dereliction of duty, um, and they'll charge them with that. But people don't understand that. So
Yeah. Even after they've already been punished.
yes.
They've already been punished, and then when people don't understand is after your career, if you end up getting any of those charged with any of them, um, you know, you're gonna have difficulty trying to get a job after the military.
Mhm. Oh
They
yeah.
lost your security clearances. Most of the jobs that we have offered to us getting out of the military, coming from Marine Special Operations, to do something that is like sort of makes sense for the next step or whatever, um, it requires a security clearance. So
Mhm.
it's it's very very unfortunate. And so how how can people support you, Danny, that in in this time as we're waiting for this court martial date? How can
They
people get involved?
they they can get involved through UAP, uh, Reconnaissance Foundation, and Recon Sniper Foundation. And I mean, heck, you could support just by listening and being a little bit more educated before you speak or you talk, or you want to be a keyboard warrior. That would be nice. Or have some be a little empathetic and maybe put yourself in our shoes, because people are so quick to say things without any backing or knowledge or facts. Um, so, as you said, we're still human. We still
Yeah.
have feelings. We still have emotions. We still have to live our lives and try to raise kids that can thrive in this world. So that would just be nice. Um, I don't know. Just take the time to really think things thoroughly before you say things. So,
Well, I'll include links in the description of this video, but that's uap.org, and they're what there's they're raising they help defend warfighters
mhm.
when they're on trial,
Yeah.
and then um, Recon Sniper Foundation and the Recon Foundation are also helping support. So I'll include links to those. Make sure you go check them out, see how you can get involved, see how you can help. Fred, when I podcasted with him, also mentioned that, you know, in order to get this case disposed, we need to get this out in the public and get the right people to hear it. President Trump is the commander in chief and could um, he can move freely with it, you know, all through the DoD. So um, a way to do that Fred was mentioning was sometimes sending letters to your uh, congressmen and senators isn't enough. If the way the system works, if you say anything about you were in the military, like if I said I was a Navy, special operations corpsman, they would send that to the Navy. It wouldn't even go. It goes to the congressman's office, and then they see Navy on it, and then they send it to the Navy. So,
Mhm.
and they're expected to, you know, so how are you expected to see change if the service is handling it? It seems like it's all handled in house. So,
Right.
if you can go out to where your representatives are doing a town hall and ask them, stand up and ask a question. Say, hey, um, have you heard about this case? There's an injustice that's about to be happening. Um, can you get involved to support the injustice that happens within our uh, military, and ask them to join the Justice for Warriors Caucus. There's a group, and so the idea is that they can then, they have more chance of getting the ear of the president. Obviously, he's got a lot on his table, but they may be able to fill him in on what's going on. So, and share these podcasts. Go listen to the one I did with Fred. Get some. We talked a lot about how the military justice system works. There's several other podcasts out there worth listening to. Um, Soft Rep did a podcast. So yeah, and share them. Share the information. Get it out there. Share Destiny's story, and because frankly, I believe this needs to change, Destiny. This
Mhm.
we shouldn't even be having this conversation. Um, but I'm thankful that you're willing to share yourself and share your heart and your experience, and that we can get this story out here, because it is happening, and it's happening to humans. It's happening to your family, to your kids, um, and your husband, and this and to other men and their families, and then it's
Mhm.
also there's another family, the family of the deceased, involved in this as well.
Mhm.
So let's let's do what we can to support you, support your family, and everyone involved. Um, Again, I I can't thank you enough for you and your family's service to this nation. You served yourself. Um, you've already sacrificed so much for this country. You've already lost one Marine Raider husband, and um, me as being out in the military now, I am very thankful for those who continue to do the job. I'm thankful for Danny, and for you supporting him in this, and I just you know I admire you for the courage you've shown in this, and I just encourage you all to just keep fighting, and I know you will.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you for being very patient with me throughout this whole process. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak freely and speak what was on my mind.
Awesome. Well, did you have anything else you'd like to share?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining me, and uh, people, please get involved. All right. Bye, Destiny.
Bye. Thank you, Dan.